All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the Entree Architect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, March 9th, 2023. Thanks for joining us today. As you get here, say hi, let us know that you're here, and let us know where here is for you. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis, and I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. Doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar. You said, hey, 2023 is my year and I'm on the runway to starting my own thing. Or maybe you started your own thing a year ago or 10 years ago or 27 years ago. And you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that thing, what that firm is, could be, should be, maybe even reimagine what it is. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need-to-know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So thanks for joining us today, as usual, for these Context and Clarity live conversations. I am joined by Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Hello, Jeff.
Welcome back. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pretty excited today because I just wrote about this on Facebook. It's a networking event, but it's a Titanic, watching the movie Titanic, but mostly the costume is what I am now obsessed with because I'm going to go as an iceberg. So all I can think about is how I'm going to design the costume. I was thinking
Okay.
like a collar around my neck, and that's the water, and then just the rest
Uh,
of me is the iceberg.
nice. Very creative. I like that.
Yeah. Then I can still sit and eat. Oh, there's also going to be a recreation of the dinner, first class dinner,
All right.
which I love. But I have to be able to sit there and eat in the costume. So anyway,
Well,
that's just what
well,
I'm obsessed about at the moment. I just thought I'd
make sure
share it.
you're able to get to a lifeboat too.
I don't need one. I'm the iceberg.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You'll
Yeah,
float. Okay, got it.
that's where I live.
Fantastic.
Isn't that fun?
I'm looking at the comments over here, and I see Christian is in the room first today. Christian, welcome back from Ithaca, New York. He's in first, which means that he is the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award. Congratulations, Christian. I see Scott, or no, that's not Scott Thrift. That is Good Afternoon from Flint, Michigan. Coffee Sketch Podcast, Kurt. He's heading the large crowd over on Twitch. Glad he's joining us today. Jessica, welcome back from Los Angeles, and Mark R. LePage, welcome. He says, "Hello, my friends. You are awesome." So he's not talking to us. He's
What?
talking to the our
Ah,
guest in the
well,
green
that's
room.
sad. I thought that was
Yeah.
nice, and maybe he
Sorry,
means
sorry to
all
burst your
five of
bubble.
us.
Maybe,
My
maybe.
bubble's so
If you
chronically
are
burst.
if you're commenting away and your comments are not showing up on the screen like Mark's or like Jessica's or like Christian's, it's probably because you are in a closed Facebook group, a private Facebook group, and there are rules. Facebook will not allow your comment, your name, your likeness to leave that group unless you give it permission to talk to Restream, which is this platform that we use here. So open up a separate browser window, type in chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now. Chat.restream.io/FB, as in Facebook. And a couple of clicks later, you will give Facebook permission to let your comments appear on the screen like some of the others have. So welcome again. If you've just joined us, you have found the Context and Clarity live conversation for March 9th. Say hi. Even if you're just planning to listen in, or if you're multitasking right now, that's okay. At least go over to the comments and whatever platform you're watching on right now. Could be YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, any of those places. Just go over to the comments and say, hey, I'm here. And let us know where you're joining from. It's always fun to see where everybody's joining the conversation from. All right. We've got a big show today.
We do.
we have a very full green room. It's full of people and it's full of treats. And we had a whole conversation earlier about about the treats in the green room. So let me just give you a rundown. We've got Reese cups, necessity.
Yep.
We have 9 Hershey Kisses.
Which means we can't have any, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're I don't think we get any of these. This
No.
is just for our green room guests. We have 9 Hershey's Kisses, and then we have chocolate covered raisins. Now, why do we have so many different treats in the green room today? It's because we have so many different guests in the green room today. This is going to be a lot of fun. Our guests today are architects, storytellers, and podcast hosts. They're friends from architecture school at Syracuse University who spend their time telling I should say they spend their spare time telling the seldom told stories of the women who have shaped architecture, construction, and development. They are the three co-hosts of the She Builds podcast: Norgie Rivas, Jessica Rogers, and Lizi Raar. Welcome to Context and Clarity Live. We'll get everybody in here.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon, everybody. We've got some new names and faces popping into the comments here today, which is fantastic. We've got somebody checking in from Puerto Rico and Miami. This is good. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. And for those of you that have joined Context and Clarity for the first time, we do this every day. On Thursdays, we have this interview style, which is fantastic. We have special guests, just like we do today, but we shape the whole week around the theme that we're going to talk about. So we've been talking about women who have somehow helped shape the built environment all week, and so it's leading up to this conversation today. Mark wants to know who's the Choco Raisin fan.
Well, surprisingly, also Jeff says he would eat them. So,
yep, I did admit that I would eat them,
just not in a cookie.
I would know that they were raisins.
I didn't realize that our snacks were selfish. That I didn't think of sharing the kisses.
It's okay. That's all right. I wasn't
kisses.
saying it was selfish, but we weren't. Nobody else was going to have any. That's all I was just saying. In case anybody else thought they could have them.
Yeah, I mean they are provided for you, so they're meant to be for you. Yeah. No worries.
Yep.
We've got Osman joining now from Costa Rica. Very cool. And Chris Novelli has joined us from Massachusetts. Welcome to everybody. Again, if you've just joined us, if you haven't said hi yet, at least give us a shout out. Just say, hey, I'm joining and I'm in wherever it is that you are. And we'll include you in the conversation today. All right. Three friends from architecture school at Syracuse in New York. Jim Boeheim retired last night, by the way.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Did you ever think that that day would come? Fantastic guy. So you're three friends from architecture school. You've graduated. You're now spread all across the country. As we see you on the screen, Jessica's in Miami, Lizzie's in San Francisco, and Norgie's in Houston. So you're all across the country. And I think we can all agree. I think we all understand now that there are a lot of women across the history of the profession and beyond, right? The people that shaped the built environment that have not been recognized for maybe various reasons. And maybe we get into that in a minute. But and we didn't learn about these women, a lot of these women in school, but you've graduated, you've moved all across the country. Why did you decide? We've got 5 podcasters on the screen right now. So we at least know, where this question is going. Why did you decide to jump in and say, hey, let's do a podcast about women? Let's do a podcast called She Build. What was the initial thing to say we ought to do this?
Take it away, Lizzie. I used to tell this story for years, and now I've given the baton to Lizzie. In 2 years, it'll be Jessica's turn.
Yeah, I'll tell the story for Norgie because it's kind of her story, but now apparently it's my job. So Norgie, she was on the hunt. She loves history. And so she was like, I really want to listen to a history podcast, and I really want it to be about women in architecture. And she could not find that podcast. And so she thought, well, maybe I should make it myself, but that sounds, that's kind of intense. So she's like, I'm going to buy a friend of mine, right? And so she tells her friend, and she's like, what do you think about this idea for a podcast? And he was like, that sounds like a cool idea, but it sounds more like a limited series because I don't know that you could make it a long running show. And she was like, well, challenge accepted.
That's so relatable. I love that you felt that way.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
And so anyway, she reached out to Jessica and I separately, and we both said yes. And so to like join her in this journey, and that's kind of how it began. We do always say, like, we can't really fault that guy for thinking that, because even amongst ourselves, we could only probably name 5 historic women architects before starting this show. Yeah. So as much as it did spur us on, and we were like, oh no, well now we have to do it, but we get why, right? So
even 5's a lot. What 5 would you have said?
Julia Morgan.
Yeah.
Marion Manny Griffin.
Oh, I don't know her.
Zaha. Oh, Zaha's not historic.
She's not. Well, you had to be.
It's not really historic though. Alive. I'm trying to remember who else. There were like a couple.
Norma Merrick-Sklaric.
And
what about Eileen
Bethune?
Eileen Gray.
At least by name.
Eileen Gray. Yeah.
Eileen Gray. Yeah.
I can come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So a few.
Not many.
No, not at all. I mean, we started our week this week on Monday, and we always start with a question for our weekday conversations. And it was, who is a woman, or who are women designers, to leave it pretty broad, or who are designers who happen to be women, who are your favorites, that kind of thing. And it was slow going at first, as we're throwing that out to our whole community. And, and I was Googling at the same time, right? Because like, well, what if nobody says anything? What if nobody knows? Yeah. So, but we did, the 5 or 6 or 7, whatever that list just ended up being, they came out, and then others, and, some more contemporary. But yeah, I was trying to think, because somebody mentioned this as we were talking Monday about the 2. They said the 2 that were talked about in their school, and I thought, my gosh, I don't even know, right? I don't even know if it was 2 or if it was 1 or none or 3. So why do you think, right? You couldn't collectively maybe come up with 5 more, too many more than 5, and your friend said, I don't think you're going to be able to do this. Why do you think these stories have not been told in the past? Because as we have learned over the course of the week, there are a lot of contributions. There are a lot of innovations. There are a lot of all of this that need to be attributed to women. But why do you think they haven't been?
Well, I think that we officially weren't even allowed in the industry for a lot of years before men were doing it. So,
from also perspective, yeah,
exactly. It's cultural, society, and a lot of women were doing all of the things, but because they weren't allowed to do it, all that work was getting attributed to men.
Somebody else. Yep.
So I think that is one of the biggest issues why we don't know a lot of these stories, is because either no one knew about their work, or it was attributed to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's changing now?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're allowed to practice, right?
That's a start.
That's a big difference. Yeah.
That's a difference. But that was one of the things that I was concerned with this week is, I'm on the screen with 4 women architects, 4 architects who are women. How do we ensure that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50, 100, whatever years from now, someone can look back and say, what's Norgie's story? Or what's Katharine's story? What's Lizi's story? What's Jessica's story? Has it changed to the point that we don't have to worry about that? Or do we need to be conscious about doing something, right? I'm going to, how do I tell my story, or how do I document my work so that someone could find it in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, like, it is getting better, but I also think that yeah, like to your point, I think we need to still be intentional about documenting work. Some of these women too like did not do that very well, which is part of the reason too that like some of their stuff is not as well known. And so like documenting work for sure, but also I think, getting this more into like educate or just like talking about them more into the education sphere, because like we said, like we didn't learn about these. Most people I feel like don't learn about women architects in college and that kind of thing. And part of it is maybe, it's not the like Starchitect work of history or whatever, partly because like that's not work that was being given to women, but also partly because like it was being attributed to men. And so sort of maybe course correcting on some of those stories so that those women are more known. And then also making sure that it's documented of like women's work today so that when we're looking back, we can see like what they were doing and that there were women working today doing these awesome projects that we should be looking at. Right. I know someone in the comments said critical architectural theory. And like, I think that is true because I think, unless we're kind of changing that part too, right? How we're educating new architects, like that won't, make its way through like the later professions as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have other thoughts, but.
Well, all of that, because there is that part of the like, how do we evoke change or how does that affect the future? So there's that part. But then it's the stuff that happens outside of like the actual practice of architecture, like equal pay, making women become principals, women-owned firm ownership, and things like that. Because women have been so much in the background of a lot of these things, but putting them as well in the forefront today will help get their names out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've talked about that on the show too, that like schools are now very, it's fairly 50-50 in terms of like male, female, and that kind of thing. But that doesn't necessarily translate into leadership in firms and licensure and other things too. So like there is sort of a disconnect there.
It would be great if we could talk about or learn about them in school without mentioning that they're women. Just say, here's another architect who did X, Y, or Z. That would be the ultimate goal in my mind.
And Katharine, in some of our episodes, projects that we've studied in school, that they hadn't told us the full story of those buildings that we've like analyzed to like the nuts and bolts of it. But like Chandigarh, for example, Chandigarh, Le Corbusier, that's what we know. But what you didn't know is that Jane Drew was actually the one that like got the commission, but she was like, I'm too busy. Give it to this dude named Le Corbusier. And then what you didn't know after that is that there's this other chick, Yui Chowdhury, yeah. She was like, okay, I'm gonna be the like in-house architect to get these projects done. So like Corbusier barely did anything. He showed up, took the pictures, shook hands, but it was these other two women that if it wasn't for them two, Chandigarh wouldn't even exist. And I don't remember hearing that in school.
Definitely not, no.
We get really fouled up about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I would like to get to the point where it's not even necessary to mention the women in architecture, Norgie Rivas did this, but I don't think we're there yet. I think it would have helped me a lot in school. I honestly, in school, didn't even realize that I wasn't learning about women. And I think that if I would have seen someone that looked like me while I was learning, that would have changed the way I viewed my courses, my career. So even though it's not the best thing ever, but I think that we do need to make a point to mention this woman architect did this, just like Jessica told the story right now, until we get to the point where it's very gender neutral. Does that make sense?
Right. I agree. I'm just saying that I would be, if I live long enough, I would love to see that it's not something that we have to bring up.
That would be great. That's the goal.
Yeah. What is your process for maybe starting with deciding who you want, whose story you want to tell, And then, as you're pointing out, the research cannot be easy on, at least in my head, tell me if I'm wrong, but the research doesn't seem like it would be that easy when we didn't learn, the Corbu story is a great example. If that's what most of the books say, most of our textbooks from school say, how do you go about finding these stories?
So at the beginning, we had this Google Doc sheet that we just started name dropping all the ladies that we would come across of first person to do this, first person in our hometown, our state, whatever. We just started doing that. But as we've developed seasons, we've created themes for each season, and then that becomes our guardrails. Oh, and I should also mention that on that Google Doc, it's where we put, like, I call dibs. I want to talk about this lady, and I want to talk about that lady, and that's also become a thing when we're researching. So once we have our theme decided, we look back at that list, and then we'll either pull from that list or we'll pull from others. But like you said, the research, there are some women out there that we've had the privilege of having resources easily available to us, whether they're in books or in website databases or archives we've been able to dig into. But there's still some that they're either translated or they're in a language that none of us speak. We speak of quite a few, but just that one that we can't. Or there just isn't enough information to tell a whole story or a whole episode. But yeah.
So what have been some of your favorites to research and then tell? Do each of you have a favorite?
Okay.
Yes.
So I have one in mind, but she is not an. Okay, so I'll go first. The one that I have in mind is actually not an architect.
Okay.
But we had a season of like non-architects, but have impacted the industry. So Frances Perkins, she was one of the first to be in the.
She was the first woman
state
cabinet member.
Yes, the first woman cabinet member. So with her, she like grew up during the time of the Triangle Waste T-shirt factory fire in New York. So because of her, we have building codes. And her story is super fascinating because she worked with a lot of these tradesmen and people that basically, because of them and like egress, exit doors, fire safety, all of these things that we now do because it's like from the back of our hand, we know that we have to do it. It's because of her influence and making it into policy. So.
Whose cabinet was she in?
FDR.
Roosevelt.
Got it.
Was it that late?
I think so. I know she was in his cabinet. I'd have to like refer back to that. So maybe
I don't know. She went to my college, so they talk about her all the time. So.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. But even when I went to a women's college, we didn't learn about women that often. Yeah. Strangely enough, unless it was a special women in art class. Anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my students a couple of years ago. So my grad students, we do basically a business plan competition as our pro practice class, and he wanted to do something around architecture and protecting workers and specifically in the fashion industry. So she came up in his research and in his discussion. So that's the reason that name was identifiable to me because of his project. So that was good.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It was that late. Okay. Anyway.
Norgie,
I listened to that. That was a good one. Episode. I mean,
that was a good episode. I mean, we like all of them, right? But
right.
Some are more. Anyway, my favorite is Lina Bobardi. She is a Brazilian architect, and she is fabulous. She's very involved in academia, theory, building. She did so many things, and my favorite project of her is called MASP, and it's a museum. And just the way that she studied the site, and she created a museum, and she wanted to bring the art to the people. So instead of putting the art on the walls, she created this system where the art was on pedestals. And so you walk around the art, and in a way you are one with the art and you're part of the exhibition. And most of her projects are very community driven like that. And she inspires me every day. I just love her. I hope I meet her in heaven.
So
That's how much I love her.
I was about to ask if she's contemporary or what period of time. So apparently she's not contemporary.
No, well, so one thing about our show is that all of our episodes are focused on women in history. So to us, that means that they've passed away.
Okay.
So I would say Saha is in history because just by our definition of women passing away. But the cool thing about it, and something Jessica thought of, was that at the end of the show, we tie that woman to someone alive today, and we call that the caryatid.
I love
And
that.
so
That's a great idea.
it was all Jessica. And actually, Lizzie came up with the name for the segment, so it's a group effort.
Yeah,
It really is.
Well, I just mean the caryatid being the women who are the pillars of, for the building.
from the Requiem.
Yeah, makes
Exactly.
makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, dipping back into my architectural history knowledge, like
Yeah.
Comes in handy.
Mhm.
yeah.
I would love to remember the details like Lizzie does, because I remember names and I remember things that they did, but I'm not so great with the dates.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how far ago Lena Babardi lived, but she was World War II. So
Okay.
put her there.
Okay. Well, that gives us a time frame.
It does. Yeah,
Yeah.
it certainly does.
I haven't listened to that one. I'll have to listen to that one.
It's a two-parter.
It's so good. Yeah, that I had to do 2 episodes. Like I wanted to share so much of her story. We try to keep our episodes 30, 40 minutes, like a commute. Some seasons we've gotten longer, but during this season, I had like a 2-hour episode. So we're like, let's cut this. And so it ended up being 2 episodes, but it's a good story. Let me know what you think. Message me after you listen to it.
I'll message you. Yeah, sure.
So you have completed 7 seasons, and I think is season 8 is about to drop. Is that right?
Next week.
Yeah.
Next week. All right.
What's the theme?
Places we've called home.
Oh, that's right. Places you could be anywhere you lived that you called home. Like where you
Yes.
got mail, I guess. I was imagining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's the way I was thinking about it anyway. I remember listening to that at the end of your season 7 wrap up. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Nice. Lizzie, what's one of your favorites, or more than one?
Yeah, I was going to say it's a toss-up, I feel like, for me. I love Julia Morgan. That was like the first episode I did. She was the first female licensed in California. She did Hearst Castle, which is just kind of a weird, like crazy building, but she just worked and worked and worked. Although terrible documenter. We always say, like, don't do what Julia Morgan did. She like burned all her drawings that clients didn't want after, because she was like, my buildings will speak for themselves. No, Julia, they won't. Like,
Horrible.
tell us more. And then I also love Florence Knoll. And I think her story was really interesting to me too. She went to Cranbrook and was kind of in with the Saarinen and that whole crowd, but married Hans Knoll, who had a furniture company. And I guess, I knew the name Knoll, and people might know her name, Florence Knoll, but it's like that company, like, it has become so big or whatever. And she was really the driving force behind that. And, she was trained as an architect, but ended up kind of doing a little bit more on the interior side and furniture design, was doing all the kind of creative parts of their company. And it's the thing that blew me away about her was that she's the reason that we do sample boards, or like have little sample cards. Cause like they didn't really do that before, but she started doing that because like the designs were very modern and clean. And so she was like, they'll get more of a feel for the space if I give materials, because otherwise it looks too stark and too bland. Yeah. So
That's a great takeaway. I mean, it's one thing to, to hear the story, to learn about somebody, but the when you have that really solid takeaway and go, hey, I've done that, or we've worked on a project like that before. That's very cool. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
We have a lot of good questions from the audience right now.
Bring them in.
Ooh, I don't even know which one to start with. Well, John wants to know if you've learned about yourself, what you've learned about yourselves from this whole project. Let me find that one over here. Any of you want to?
Whoa, getting real deep.
This is
too deep?
it's a deep crowd.
Yes.
We're very deep thinkers.
I've
Okay,
got
there
it.
we go.
There you
Okay. So I guess what I've learned about myself, because it also lends itself to the answer to this question, is to operate without fear, like to just like jump into it. Because like Norgie, she came out to us and she was like, I want to do this podcast. What do you think? I easily could have said like, never done it. I love podcasts, but there's no way. I don't know
Yeah,
how.
too
No.
busy. But
Yeah, or just I just don't know how, and
Yeah.
hearing my voice like, oh, but jump, just like, and then even when you do jump, there's always something that good comes out of it, or a lesson that you learn. It's a little vague answer, but it's the biggest thing. So like a lot of the things that we do with our podcast, I'm always the first one to say like, let's do it. And it takes these
Yes.
two to be like, okay, let's figure out how. But I'm like, let's just go.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm the more like, wait, how does that happen?
I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have all those forces at one time.
Yeah.
Do either the other two of you want to answer that question, or should I go on to have you?
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm building up on what Jessica was saying. I've learned a lot about resilience, like the resilience that we learn about from the women that we talk about, and even us doing this. I mean, the first episode we did, we recorded probably 10 times because we really had no idea what we were doing, and every time it was a little better. And even in my career, I'm still going through the AREs, and there was a time that I felt like I was going to give up. And thanks to these stories and Julia Morgan, how many times did she try to get into
the Echols? Yeah, I can't remember. It's like at least 3 times or whatever that she's
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other day we learned about a lady. Was it the Spur lady that took a test 12 times?
Oh, the Caltrans.
The Caltrans, Lewis Cooper.
Yeah.
Lewis Cooper, she took a test 12 times. And it's not that she wasn't smart, it's that she wasn't allowed to practice in the field. And practicing in the field is how she would be able to get the experience. So instead of giving up, she decided to go back to school. She figured out a way to do it, to push through, to reach her goals. And I don't know, maybe it's super cheesy, but to like the ladies and the stories inspire me to keep being resilient, keep taking the AREs, and just keep going.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that's one of the things that's important about these stories is what do we take away from this, right? It's when these stories aren't being told, about these historical women, they're not being told. We don't get to see the resilience. We don't get to see the obstacles, the struggles, and all of those things. So I think that's one of the important things that you're doing is you're bringing some of these things to light. I think that's a great example.
Yeah.
Lizi, how about you? Have you learned anything about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to these two, just like not being afraid, like, because I will say I was the most skeptical of like, we're gonna do this and like only our parents are gonna listen to this, like, you know what I mean? So I think too, just like, like this idea that the reception has been really great, and the fact that other people are really interested in these stories as much as we are, and like every time that just finding so many names I think is very inspiring and has like inspired me to feel like, oh yeah, no, like what you're doing, it like, I don't know, it's worth it, like something's happening because of it and that kind of thing, and it's really important work. And I don't know if that's really about myself, but just more like a reframing of my own like thoughts on like what we're doing and that kind of thing. And it's through both the research that we're doing and the community of people who are like really excited about what we're doing. So
Is there an end game? Is there a point where you say, this is what we want to accomplish, or is it just we're in it now because somebody told us that we couldn't, and we're gonna keep this thing going. We're gonna tell as many stories as we possibly can.
That's why I went to architecture school, because someone told me I couldn't. So here I am.
There you go.
Here we all are.
That's great. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good decision-making process. Anyway, so I don't mean to interrupt. What is the end game?
But also, well, like, when did someone tell you that? It's to this day, we're still having this issue that people are telling us we can't do it.
No, that's true. I know. And then, but, a lot of us have that attitude of now I have to do it because you just told me I can't do it. So
exactly
the way that goes.
We don't quite have an end game. I think some of us have mentioned that our goal is that Julia Morgan and Norma Merck-Skalaric, Lina Bobardi, all these ladies are as well known as Le Corbusier. So maybe when I see as much written about them as I see about Le Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, and all these other guys, maybe I'll feel like our work is at a good stopping point, but I don't see that happening very soon.
Yeah.
I think we're just having fun.
Yeah.
Kind of related to that, Mark had made a comment earlier saying that architecture schools are using your show as curriculum. So that's so exciting. Do you know which schools are doing that?
Oh, I don't know which school in particular. It was a
just
professor in Twitter that
that's awesome. That is so great.
Somebody's syllabus. But yeah, we want all the schools. So that's one of our goals is how do we get not necessarily like our content in their curriculum, but to make sure that the stories that we're telling are also becoming someone's history lesson.
Right, right.
So
have you written to all of the schools and told them about your podcast? So at least they know about it?
So this is our side project because we still have regular jobs. So
those pesky regular jobs, they get in the way of podcasts.
So one day we're working on it.
Yeah, that's one of our goals, get better at what's it called? Marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing ourselves.
You know what? Maybe all of us can help you by just writing to our own architecture schools and letting them know about your show. Because you don't have to write to everybody. We could write to our own places.
We love that.
That would be amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all should. So
Thank you.
Jeff, do you mind if I say one more thing? I know I'm talking a lot today.
Go right ahead.
I love the way that you do research where you collect all the information, then you kind of teach each other about it. And it reminds me of the way that my great-grandmother was in this want to know club where women, because they would research something and then they would come bring it to the group and tell everybody. And there was never allowed to be any food or anything else that was women related, or typical hostess stuff. So it was all about just learning whatever it was. And so teaching each other that way and doing the research, I just like that model.
I think that's one of the things that we chose the format that we did is because, okay, so Lizi, she likes history, Norgie likes history. I like history, but I'm not going to lie. If it's boring, I'm going to fall asleep. So if we tell the stories in the way that we do, we hope that it's a little bit more engaging. We always say it's like if you're talking to your friends over coffee and just like, hey, I heard this cool story about so and so, and that's kind of like how we started it, just to make it more fun and more relatable and more engaging.
Yeah, like your Kate Gleason episode that I was listening to, and all the scuttlebutt with her brother Andrew kicking her out and all the rest of it. Like that was just like you're talking about somebody, that we all know or that we haven't heard about in a long time. Like whatever happened to her? Well, she, so it's pretty engaging. I like it.
What's funny is that we'll respond, even we'll listen back to episodes and we'll respond the same way that we would in the episode. Or we've had a lot of people tell us that it's like if they're trying to have a conversation with us as they're listening to us. So they just want to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good sign, right? You've reached that level of engagement that can really drive these conversations and drive the audience. That's good. So one thing I would do, everybody that's watching this now, or will watch this in the future because obviously it's recorded, or hear the podcast version of it. Maybe the easiest thing to do is to go over to YouTube, go to the Entree Architect YouTube channel when this is over, and grab the link for this video and send it to your favorite professor. So go over to the Entree Architect YouTube channel, grab the link for this video and send it to your favorite professor, all of your favorite professors. So Mark, thanks for sharing that link. There you go. Just click on that. You end up over there. And that's because I think, I think about, when, you may have noticed I teach pro practice in a little bit of a non-traditional way. I use podcasts and all kinds of things as resources. If we're really going to, really going to get these stories into curriculum, Norgie said, when there's as much written about some of these ladies as Corbu or Mies or whoever, then you'll feel like, you've kind of done your job. That takes a long time. So getting the media that we have available, YouTube videos, your podcast itself, getting that in front of people, professors that are open enough to include that as resources in the class. And that's a hurdle too. It's a bunch of old guys, older. They're all older than me. But I think that's a way that you could really accelerate this as well.
Yeah.
So send it out. Send it to your professors. That's what you need to do.
He's talking to all of us, not you.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to our show notes. So when we think of like research and stuff, we always make it a point to credit our resources. So we kind of treat it almost like a research paper as well. Mm-hmm. So we kind of use it to that one, like if I'm a student and I want to write a paper, what are the sources that I can use? And sometimes it's easy to just find all the sources of one thing in one place. So that's kind of like how we use our show notes, so that it becomes also like a springboard for others to do their own research, but we kind of give them a head start on what to use. So it'd be good in the more academic setting as well.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research. I mean, not as much as we'd like, but I have hope. I mean, there's the International Archive of Women in Architecture is one of the first places I learned about, because through the show, I learned about Milka Bliznakov, who started this, and it's in Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. It's in Virginia Tech, and it's a huge resource of materials from all sorts of women in architecture. And they're constantly have all these calls to action, asking women in the profession to submit their work, and they have all these conferences. So we get information from them. And then there's another one that we use that I don't want to butcher the name. So Jessica, please. The BWFA. Beverly Willis.
Oh, the Beverly Willis Architecture Foundation. So she's
also really great.
Yeah, and she has a whole website and archive.
Yeah, the Pioneering Women in Architecture.
Nice.
Yeah, and Madame Architect, Un Arquitecta.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one time I was researching. We don't only talk about women architects. We also try to expand it to women in the profession of construction. Mm-hmm. So I was researching the first woman to graduate as an engineer in the US, and that was Elizabeth Bragg. And for the longest time, that's all I could learn from her, that she graduated. Done. And then months later, I decided, let me try again. And there was a new resource. I was like, yay! So sometimes we look back and there's a new article written about these ladies, and that gives me hope that this research is being done and it's getting better and it's expanding.
So is there some sort of momentum that you see? I mean, you're making waves, right? If you're pulling all this research together, you just named off a whole lot of places that you can go to accumulate this research. but then you're putting it together in an episode, in a story, and in the show notes that a student could go to, like it's the bibliography, right? Um,
Mhm.
so you're pushing it in that direction, but but do you see momentum headed in that direction since, hey, this popped up since the first time I looked? Is there momentum in a positive direction that says, hey, maybe there is progress being made here?
I think so. I see it in two ways, or the our caryatids that we have. When I think it was Kate Gleason that we had a caryatid that was a plumber or a tradeswoman working today, and once we like announced that she was our caryatid, this whole slew of like women in trade and construction started to like rally and like applaud this caryatid. So I think more recognition and exposure is happening on the Today side. And then recently we had someone do like a spotlight on one of our ladies that we did. Up until this point, I had not, if it wasn't for my own research, I hadn't heard of the lady. So to see someone else also do a spotlight on this woman, that's how we make the Julia Morgans become as well known as
Yeah.
Corbusier. Just this recognition. So I think there's a momentum. It's slow, but it's happening.
Yeah, but I do think so too, just because like there are more of these websites coming up that like we're using, and so it's great for us because it's like good resources. But I do think we're seeing more and more of those kinds of resources and books coming out and things like that, which is really great to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have it is great for you because it assists with your research, but then you have a platform where you can leverage that into your art, into your version of the story. So I love the way it all comes together. I didn't even realize the sort of the perfect storm there. That's great. Mark said books. Yeah, books. Remember what those are? I don't, but
Actual books.
real books.
Yeah.
Real books.
One of our favorite resources is a book, and it's such a favorite that the name is escaping me right now.
The Women of Stone. I always mix it up. It's
Steel
Women
and
of
Stone.
Steel and Stone.
Steel and Stone by
Anna Lewis.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is it like a what kind of book is it? Is it a novel or a story or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction. It's actually like little biographies about like a bunch of different women, and it's architects, engineers, and landscape architects.
Huh.
And I think it was marketed as a young adult book, like for young girls to learn like these stories about women.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah,
I should be able to understand it. That means hopefully
It's an easy read.
It's an easy read, and they're good. But like she had lots of research, and she has sources too, which is nice because then like you can refer to those as well. And so, yeah.
Also, once you hear the name and hear a little bit of the story, then you see it everywhere after that. It feels like
yes,
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Mark wants to know. Mark Arla Page wants to know, when is the She Builds book being released?
Listen, man.
Great question.
Right after we get better at marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like we're putting it out there, Like,
we want to do that.
Yeah, we want to do it. It's part of one of our goals.
Yeah. Well, so
we're starting merch.
Yes. Somebody asked when is
there you go.
So
reps right there.
Hoping to release that soon.
Like I know we only have a couple.
Somebody asked how long the seasons are too. They're 10 episodes each.
Okay.
Yeah, because you do a recap plus each of you do 3 reports, basically. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, I know we only have a couple minutes, but what are your day jobs? You all work as architects?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am an architectural designer at eStudio Architecture here in Houston, Texas. And we do a little bit of a lot. We're a 30-person firm. So I get to wear many hats and learn a lot. Right now I'm working on retail, which I'm really enjoying. So
great.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I work at a small residential firm up in Marin County outside of San Francisco. Polsky Prostein Architects. We're about 10 people, and we do single-family residential remodels, new builds, that kind of thing. So, and I like, I'm a architectural designer there, and yeah, we do start to finish. So it's fun.
Nice.
Lizzie's licensed, by the way.
I was gonna say, you're an architect.
I was to say,
You're an
I
architect.
was like, I don't remember what my actual title is. That was like the pause. I was like, I don't remember what I'm called now, but I'm an architect. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Say it proud.
Yep.
I'm not an architect yet, but I'm working in practice. I work at a small residential firm here in Miami. But prior to that, I had spent the past 5 years working in Washington, D.C. at the AIA headquarters. So, but now I'm in practice. So it's been an interesting transition.
I'm
That's
sure.
great.
I'm sure.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. As we head, like Katharine said, we're almost at the top of the hour, so we're going to have to wrap this up momentarily, which is a real shame because it'd be fun to carry this on for a while. But next week, as we think about Context and Clarity and Context and Clarity Live, next week is our 100th Context and Clarity Live, and our guest next week will be this. It's interesting how things come together. Our 100th Context and Clarity Live episode, Kimberly Dowdell, principal at HOK, past president of NOMA, and soon to be, I don't know exactly how you announce this, she'll be president of AIA next year, but she will be the 100th president of the American Institute of Architects. She will be our guest for the Context and Clarity Live next week, so we're looking forward to that. And maybe it's a great continuation of this conversation in a way. It's been a lot of fun this week, and today's only Thursday, right? So there's still tomorrow to go, but it's been a lot of fun celebrating the women who have helped and who continue to shape the built environment, the profession of architecture and construction and design. We're going to wrap up our week tomorrow with the question: who is a woman? Who's one of these women in the built environment that you'd like to know more about, and why? And so here's a maybe a suggestion to everybody out there. And I've had to say this a couple of times this week. If you don't have an answer to this question, it might be time to do a little bit of research to prepare.
Which you can easily do by listening to She Builds, by the way.
Exactly.
You certainly could do that. But bring your best suggestions. Bring your best explorations, because it might end up being a suggestion for a future She Builds podcast episode.
That's right.
You never know.
Right. And also, I'm going to be doing the Zoom room tomorrow. So if someone, especially all the women out there, could show up, that would be great. Yeah. Not to say that I don't want the men to show up as well, but it'd be nice not to be the only.
Yeah, I'll put on the man hat for a minute for some reason, but the men need to show up as well, because these are not conversations for women.
No, they're not. But I'm often the only woman. I'm just saying.
I know.
Would be.
I know, but I feel like I need to say this because I showed up for something the other day, and it wasn't Context and Clarity, but it was focused on these same topics, and not to discount anybody that was there, but there was not a single man in attendance, and these are not conversations for women. These are conversations for all of us. None of us learned these stories in school. We all need to know these stories. So I would love it if all the men and all the women showed up for this conversation tomorrow to talk about, who do you want to know more about? And it doesn't matter if it's already been an episode of the She Builds podcast. That's great. Let's talk about that. Let's celebrate that. But let's just talk about it. Who do you want to know more about, and why? That's an important aspect of the question as well. So with that, Lizi and Jessica and Norgie, thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for the podcast. And then thank you and all of the research and the storytelling and everything else. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It was
Yeah,
great.
it was fun.
It was great that
really
we could
great.
pull this together like this. This is a lot of fun. And as always, Katharine, thank you for co-hosting with me.
You're
and
welcome.
To everybody out there in our audience, thank you. I say this every week, but it is because of you that we were able to have this conversation. We're 700 and some odd context and clarity conversations in at this point. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have the ability to reach out to Lizi and Jessica and Norgie and say, hey, can we talk about this? So thank you a little bit selfishly for this opportunity. I appreciate it. And my hope is that all of you will be safe, stay well, keep those around you safe and well, find some time to breathe and relax, find a way to rejuvenate, because we do this every day. You've got to pace yourself. You've got to find a way to recover and do it again tomorrow. Thanks for going along this journey. And we'll see you again actually tomorrow for our conversation, and next week with Kimberly Dowdell on Context and Clarity Live. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.